Marcus Chen stood at the window of the starship Prometheus, looking out at the stars. He was a commander in the human space force. But today, he felt nervous. In his hand was a strange message written in flowing alien symbols. The ship's computer had translated it as an invitation to a royal feast. "You sure about this, Marcus?" asked Captain Rodriguez, walking up behind him. "We don't know much about Zephyrian customs. Their people look like giant birds with rainbow feathers." Marcus nodded, though his stomach felt tight. "The translation says it's an honor feast. The Zephyrian king wants to meet with humans. This could be our chance to make friends with a whole new alien race." The Zephyrians had contacted Earth only 6 months ago. Their ships were beautiful, made of what looked like living crystal. Their people were tall and graceful, with feathered wings that sparkled in different colors. But they kept to themselves and spoke in a musical language that was hard to understand. A soft chime echoed through the ship. "The Zephyrian escort ship is here," announced the computer. Marcus straightened his uniform and checked his translator device one more time. He had studied what little information they had about Zephyrian culture. He learned that they valued honor, family, and complex ceremonies. They lived in floating cities and loved music and poetry. The airlock opened with a hiss. A tall Zephyrian stepped aboard. His feathers shimmered blue and silver, and his golden eyes looked ancient and wise. He wore robes that seemed to flow like water. "Greetings, human commander," the alien said in musical tones. The translator turned his words into English. "I am High Chamberlain Vextar. The king sends his joy for your acceptance of this sacred invitation." "Thank you," Marcus replied, bowing slightly as he had practiced. "I am honored by King Zarthul's invitation." Vextar's head tilted to one side, the way birds do when they are thinking. "You understand the meaning of this feast?" "Yes." "The binding ceremonies? The sacred unions?" Marcus nodded confidently. "Of course. Diplomatic ceremonies to bind our peoples together in friendship. I'm ready to represent humanity in any treaty discussions." Something flickered in Vextar's golden eyes, but he simply bowed. "Very good. Please, follow me to our ship. The journey to Athros Prime will take 3 days. You must prepare for the eternal commitments ahead." As they walked through the crystal corridors of the Zephyrian ship, Marcus marveled at everything around him. The walls seemed alive with soft light. Gardens floated in the air without any visible support. Strange music drifted through the air, beautiful and haunting. "Your ship is amazing," Marcus said to Vextar. "How does it all work?" "We grow our ships rather than build them," Vextar explained. "They are living partners, not mere tools. Like all the most important bonds in life." Marcus thought this was a poetic way to talk about technology. He made notes in his journal, thinking this would be useful information for the human engineers back home. During the journey, Marcus tried to learn more about what would happen at the feast. But every time he asked questions, Vextar gave answers that seemed both clear and confusing at the same time. "Will there be many guests?" Marcus asked. "All of the royal court will attend," Vextar said. "They come to witness the sacred moment when two become one." "And the king's family?" "His daughter, Princess Lyranus, will play the central role. She has prepared for this day her entire life." Marcus assumed this meant she would give speeches about friendship between their peoples. He spent hours practicing his own speech about human values of cooperation and peace. On the second day, Vextar taught Marcus some basic Zephyrian customs. How to bow properly, which gestures showed respect, how to accept food in the traditional way. "When you share the sacred foods with Princess Lyranus," Vextar explained, "you must eat from the same bowl. This shows trust and unity." "I understand," Marcus said, though he worried about alien food making him sick. "It's like sharing salt or bread in human cultures." "Yes," Vextar said, though his tone seemed odd. "Exactly like that. And when she offers you the crystal cup, you must drink deep. This seals the bond between your houses." Marcus practiced these ceremonies until he could do them smoothly. He wanted to show proper respect for Zephyrian traditions. On the third day, they arrived at Ethros Prime. Marcus pressed his face to the window and gasped. The Zephyrian capital was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Tall spires of living crystal rose into the sky like frozen music. Gardens floated between the towers, connected by bridges of light. At the center of it all stood the royal nest, a massive palace that looked like it had been grown rather than built. "My people have lived here for 10,000 years, Vextar said proudly. Each generation adds to the beauty, never taking away. As their shuttle approached the palace, Marcus saw thousands of Zephyrians gathering in the great courtyard. Their feathers created a sea of color. Reds and blues and golds and greens all mixed together. They seemed excited, singing in harmony as the shuttle landed. "They are here for the ceremony," Vextar explained. "This is a day that will be remembered forever." Marcus felt proud. He was making history as the first human to attend a royal Zephyrian feast. The crew of the Prometheus would be so jealous when he told them about it. As they walked through the palace halls, Marcus noticed how different everything was from human buildings. The rooms flowed into each other, without clear walls. Music seemed to come from the very air. Servants bowed as they passed, their eyes bright with what looked like joy and excitement. "The feast begins at sunset," Vextar said, as they reached the guest quarters. "Rest now, human commander. Tonight will change everything." Marcus lay on the strange floating bed and looked out at the alien city. He felt nervous but excited. He was about to make history. He would help create friendship between humans and Zephyrians that would last for generations. If only he knew what was really going to happen at this feast. If only he understood what the Zephyrians really meant by sacred union and eternal commitment. But the translator kept telling him it was all about diplomacy and treaties. The sun began to set over Ethros Prime, painting the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple. Soon, it would be time for the feast. Marcus had no idea that when the night was over, his entire life would be completely different. The feast hall was the most incredible place Marcus had ever seen. The room was shaped like a giant flower, with crystal walls that curved up to meet in a dome high above. Thousands of Zephyrians sat on perches arranged in circles, their colorful feathers making the whole place look like a living rainbow. Soft music filled the air, played by instruments Marcus could not identify. Vextar led him to the center of the hall, where two golden perches waited. One was clearly meant for him, though it had been modified to accommodate someone without wings. The other perch sparkled with jewels and flowing silk. "You will sit here beside Princess Lyranis," Vextar whispered. "Remember everything I taught you about proper behavior." Marcus nodded and took his place. The thousands of Zephyrians watching him made soft musical sounds that his translator said meant approval and joy. He tried to sit up straight and look dignified, the way a human ambassador should. Then she entered the hall, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. Princess Lyranis was unlike anything he had ever imagined. She moved with the grace of a dancer, her wings spread wide to show feathers that shifted color like the northern lights. Her face was beautiful in an alien way, with large silver eyes and features that seemed carved from starlight. She wore a dress made of what looked like captured moonbeams. The crowd's song grew louder as she approached. She settled onto the perch beside Marcus with fluid grace. When she looked at him, her silver eyes seemed to see right into his soul. "Greetings, Marcus Chen of Earth," she said in perfect English, her voice like wind chimes. "I have studied your language so we might speak directly." "Your Highness," Marcus managed to say, remembering to bow his head. "I'm honored to meet you. Thank you for learning English." She smiled, and Marcus felt something flutter in his chest. I wanted to know the mind of the one who would share this sacred day with me. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, King Zarthul rose from his massive throne. The king was enormous, with wings that spanned 20 feet and feathers of deep gold. His voice boomed across the hall as he began to speak in the musical Zephyrian language. Marcus listened to the translation in his earpiece. "My people, we gather today to witness the joining of houses, the binding of souls, the creation of new bonds that will last beyond the stars themselves. A very formal way to talk about a diplomatic treaty, Marcus whispered to himself. Princess Lyranis heard him and tilted her head with curiosity. Treaty? She asked softly. The friendship agreement between our peoples, Marcus explained. Though I have to say, your father makes it sound very romantic. Something strange flickered across the princess's face. She opened her mouth to speak, but the king continued his speech, and she fell silent. Servants began to bring food to their perches. The dishes were unlike anything Marcus had seen. Fruits that glowed softly, bread that seemed to float, and soups that changed color. As he watched, everything smelled wonderful. Now we begin the traditional sharing, Princess Lyranis said, picking up a crystal bowl filled with golden liquid. This is the first bond. Sustenance shared between joined souls. Marcus remembered Vextar's instructions. When she offered him the bowl, he took it and drank deeply. The liquid tasted like sunshine and made him feel warm all over. Then, he offered the bowl back to her, and she drank from the same spot where his lips had touched. The crowd sang louder, a joyful sound that made Marcus's heart race. Very symbolic, he said to the princess. Showing that our peoples will support each other. No, she stared at him with those silver eyes, her expression unreadable. Yes, she said slowly. Support each other. Forever. Next came the sharing of food. Princess Lyranis broke off pieces of the glowing bread and fed them to Marcus by hand. Then he did the same for her, just as Vextar had taught him. Her fingers were soft and warm when they brushed against his. With each bite, the crowd's song grew more beautiful. Marcus began to feel dizzy. Though whether from the alien food or the princess's nearness, he could not tell. You are not what I expected, Princess Lyranis said, as they shared a fruit that tasted like starlight. What did you expect? Marcus asked. Someone who sought power or advantage. Someone who saw me as a prize to be won. Her voice was soft, almost sad. But you speak to me as if I were a real person, not just a princess. Marcus was confused. Of course you're a real person. You're brilliant and beautiful and kind. Any man would be lucky to. He stopped, realizing how that sounded. I mean, any ambassador would be honored to work with you on diplomatic relations. The princess's eyes widened. She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away. When she looked back, there was something new in her expression. Hope. The ceremony continued with more sharing of foods and drinks. Each time, Princess Lyranis explained the meaning in ways that sounded diplomatic to Marcus but made the crowd sing more joyfully. They shared honey cakes to sweeten the bond between their houses. They drank sparkling wine to celebrate the joining of their futures. Marcus found himself enjoying the princess's company more than he had expected. She was not just beautiful, she was incredibly smart. She spoke about mathematics and poetry with equal passion. She asked thoughtful questions about human culture and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. On my world, he told her, we have a saying, home is where the heart is. It means that the place you belong is not about location, but about the people you care about. That is beautiful, she said. We have a similar concept, nest of the spirit. But I have never found mine. Something in her voice made Marcus look at her more carefully. There was loneliness there, hidden behind her royal composure. He realized that being a princess probably meant she spent most of her time with people who wanted something from her, not people who cared about her as a person. I'm sure you'll find it someday, he said gently. Someone who sees you for who you really are. Her breath caught. Do you think so? I know so. The final part of the ceremony involved the exchange of gifts. Princess Lyranis presented Marcus with a necklace made of crystal that seemed to hold trapped starlight. When she placed it around his neck, her hands lingered on his shoulders. This is the symbol of eternal connection, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It means that wherever you go, part of me goes with you. Marcus was touched by the beautiful symbolism. Thank you, Your Highness. I'll treasure it as a sign of the friendship between our peoples. He gave her his gift in return, a locket containing a picture of Earth from space. So you'll always remember the world that wants to be your friend, he said. She opened the locket and gasped. It's beautiful. Like a blue jewel in the darkness. As she fastened the locket around her neck, King Zarthul rose again. He spread his massive wings and spoke in a voice that echoed through the hall. Marcus listened to the translation. Let all witness that the bond is sealed. Princess Lyranis and Marcus Chen are now joined before the eyes of the gods and the court. May their union bring prosperity to both their houses. The crowd erupted in the loudest song yet. Thousands of Zephyrians rose from their perches. Their wings spread wide. Their voices lifted in celebration. Marcus smiled and waved, caught up in the excitement. He felt proud to have completed the diplomatic ceremony successfully. The treaty between humans and Zephyrians was now official, but as he looked around at all the celebrating faces, he began to notice something strange. The way they were looking at him, and Princess Lyranis, was not the way people look at diplomats who have signed a treaty. It was the way people look at something else entirely. And why did Princess Lyranis keep calling him by his first name now, instead of his title? Why was she standing so close to him that their arms touched? A cold feeling began to grow in Marcus's stomach. Something was not right here. Something was very, very wrong. But before he could figure out what it was, servants surrounded them with flower petals and music, leading them from the hall, while the crowd sang behind them. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would ask Vex Tar to explain exactly what had happened at this feast. If only he knew that by tomorrow, it would be far too late. Marcus woke up in a room that was not his guest quarters. The bed was twice as large as the one he had slept in before, and it floated in the center of a circular chamber with walls made of living crystal. Soft music played from somewhere he could not see. Gardens grew in floating pots around the room, filling the air with sweet scents. He sat up, confused. Where was he? The last thing he remembered clearly was the feast ending and being escorted away by singing servants. Everything after that was a blur of celebration and exhaustion. A soft knock came at the door, which opened to reveal Princess Lyranis. She wore a simple gown of silver silk and carried a tray of what smelled like breakfast. Her silver eyes sparkled with happiness as she entered. "Good morning, my beloved," she said with a warm smile. "I brought you food to break your fast." Marcus blinked. "Beloved? Your Highness, I think there might be some confusion." She set down the tray and moved closer to him. "Please. There is no need for titles between us now. Call me Lyra. We are bonded mates now, after all." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Bonded mates? What do you mean?" Lyra's smile faltered. "The ceremony last night. The sacred joining. We are married now, according to the laws of my people." "Married?" Marcus's voice came out as a squeak. "No, no, no. That was a diplomatic feast. A treaty ceremony. There must be some mistake." The happiness faded from Lyra's face. "Mistake? Do you not remember the vows we spoke? The sacred foods we shared? The gifts we exchanged?" Marcus's mind raced back through the previous evening. The shared bowl. The feeding each other by hand. The exchange of jewelry. His stomach dropped as he began to understand what had really happened. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." Lyra stepped back, her wings folding tight against her body. "You did not know? You thought it was just politics?" "I need to contact my ship," Marcus said, jumping up from the bed. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding. The translator. It must have been wrong about what everything meant." He activated his communication device with shaking hands. Static filled the air for a moment before Captain Rodriguez's voice came through, crackling with interference. "Marcus. Thank God you're alive. We've been trying to reach you for hours. Captain, I need you to check something immediately. Last night's ceremony, what exactly did our cultural database say it was?" "Hold on." There was a pause filled with the sound of typing. Then Rodriguez's voice came back, tight with worry. "Marcus, we have a problem. A big problem. Dr. Williams ran the ceremony through our full cultural analysis program this morning. And it wasn't a diplomatic treaty. It was a wedding ceremony. According to Zephyrian law, you're now married to Princess Lyranis. Marcus felt the room spin around him. He sank down onto the floating bed, his legs no longer able to support him. It gets worse, Rodriguez continued. As the princess's husband, you're now officially in line for the Zephyrian throne, and our computers are detecting massive fleet movements from both human and Zephyrian space. This is about to become an interstellar incident. Marcus looked up at Lyra, who stood frozen by the door, her face pale with shock and growing hurt. Captain, Marcus said quietly, I'll call you back. He turned off the communicator and looked at Lyra. She was staring at him with those silver eyes that now held tears. You truly did not know, she said, her voice barely a whisper. All those things you said to me, the way you looked at me, it was all an accident. Lyra, please let me explain. No need, she said, turning toward the door. I understand now. You were trapped by a translation error. Forced into marriage with an alien you barely know. Wait. Marcus jumped up and caught her arm gently. That's not. It's more complicated than that. She turned back to him, and he could see she was fighting not to cry. Is it? Would you have chosen to marry me if you had known what the ceremony really was? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The honest answer was no. He would never have married someone he had just met. No matter how beautiful or intelligent they were, but looking at Lyra's face, he could not bring himself to say it. I thought so, she said softly when he remained silent. The door chimed, and Vextar entered without waiting for permission. His usually calm expression was troubled. Your Highness, he said to Lyra with a bow, your father requests your immediate presence in the war room. And Commander Chen, your Captain Rodriguez is demanding to speak with King Zarthul. War room? Marcus asked. Both of our governments are mobilizing fleets, Vextar explained grimly. The human leaders are demanding your immediate return and the annulment of the marriage. They say you were tricked and that the marriage is not legally binding. Lyra's wings drooped. And my father considers this a grave insult to our royal house and our customs, to suggest that our sacred marriage ceremony is meaningless. How many ships are we talking about? Marcus asked. 50 human warships are already moving toward our space, Vextar said. And the king has called up the full royal fleet, 200 vessels. Both sides are prepared for war. Marcus felt sick. Because of his mistake, 2 entire civilizations were about to fight each other. Thousands, maybe millions of people could die. There has to be another way, he said. Some kind of compromise, or what compromise could there be? Lyra asked bitterly. Either we are married or we are not. Either our ceremony means something, or it is worthless. There is no middle ground. But even as she spoke, Marcus could see something else in her eyes. Despite her hurt and anger, despite the impossible situation, there was still a flicker of hope there, as if part of her wanted him to find a third option. Maybe there is, he said slowly. What if we didn't have to choose right now? What if we could take time to really get to know each other? To decide if this marriage could be real, instead of just accidental? Vextar looked shocked. You would stay? You would remain bonded to the princess? Not forever, Marcus said quickly. Just temporarily. Long enough to prove that humans and Zephyrians can work together. Long enough to show both our peoples that cooperation is better than war. Lyra stared at him. You would do that? Even though you were trapped into this? Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. He saw her intelligence and kindness, her loneliness and hope, her strength and vulnerability. He thought about their conversation the night before, how easy it had been to talk to her, how much he had enjoyed her company. I would, he said, if you're willing to try. For the first time since waking up, Lyra smiled. It was a small, uncertain smile, but it was real. But the fleets, Vextar protested. Both sides are preparing for battle. Then we better hurry, Marcus said. We need to convince our leaders that there's a better way. that this accident could become an opportunity instead of a disaster. Trime. He activated his communicator again. Captain Rodriguez, I need you to set up a three-way conference with Earth Command and King Zarthul. I have a proposal that might prevent a war. As he waited for the connection, Marcus caught Lyra watching him with a strange expression. What? He asked. Nothing, she said softly. It's just... Most people would be trying to escape this situation. You're the first person I've ever met who chooses to run toward problems, instead of away from them. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I suppose we'll find out together. Outside the crystal windows, Marcus could see the first human ships appearing in the distant sky, their engines bright against the stars. Time was running out. Either he would find a way to turn this disaster into something better, or he would be responsible for starting the first interstellar war in human history. But looking at Lyra's hopeful face, he thought maybe, just maybe, he could pull off a miracle. The war room in the royal nest was tense with fear and anger. King Zarthul sat on his crystal throne, his golden feathers dark with rage. On the main view screen, Admiral Hayes from Earth Command glared from her command ship, while dozens of other human and Zephyrian officers watched from smaller screens around the room. This marriage is a fraud, Admiral Hayes declared. Commander Chen was tricked into participating in a ceremony he didn't understand. We demand his immediate release and full annulment. King Zarthul's voice rumbled like thunder. You insult our most sacred traditions. The joining ceremony is blessed by our gods. To call it meaningless is an act of war. Marcus stood between them, feeling the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders. Beside him, Lyra kept her head high despite the tears in her eyes. Both of you, please listen, Marcus said, his voice cutting through their anger. I have an idea that might solve this without anyone firing a single shot. The only solution is annulment, Admiral Hayes snapped. You're coming home, Commander. That's an order. And the only solution is honoring the sacred bond, King Zarthul growled. My daughter is not some prize to be discarded when convenient. What if we didn't have to choose right now? Marcus said quickly before they could start arguing again. What if Princess Lyra and I worked together on a joint mission? Something that would prove our peoples can cooperate instead of fighting, Admiral Hayes frowned. What kind of mission? Marcus looked at Lyra, who nodded slightly. They had discussed this plan during the tense minutes before the conference began. The Nexus Gates, Lyra said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Ancient alien structures that both our peoples have discovered, but been afraid to explore alone. King Zarthul leaned forward with interest. The gates are dangerous, daughter. Many expeditions have been lost. Exactly, Marcus said. Neither humans nor Zephyrians have been able to solve them alone. But working together, combining our different ways of thinking, maybe we could succeed where others have failed. And if you succeed? Admiral Hayes asked suspiciously. Then we prove that human-Zephyrian cooperation works, Lyra explained. We show both our peoples that together we can achieve things neither could accomplish alone. And if you fail? The Admiral pressed. Marcus and Lyra exchanged glances. If we fail, then we'll know the marriage was a mistake, Marcus said quietly. And we'll accept whatever our peoples decide about annulment. The room fell silent except for the hum of the crystal walls. King Zarthul studied his daughter's face carefully. You would risk your life on this gamble, Lyranus. Yes, father. I would rather try to build something real than live with something false. Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. How long would this mission take? 6 months, Marcus said. Long enough to explore the 3 nearest gate sites and see if we can unlock their secrets. And you'll both have constant communication with your respective fleets? Of course, Lyra said. Full transparency. King Zarthul and Admiral Hayes both looked like they were swallowing something bitter, but they nodded. Very well, the king said. But understand this. If any harm comes to my daughter, the consequences will be severe. 40. Noted, Admiral Hayes said grimly. And Commander Chen, if this is some kind of trick, it's not, Admiral. I give you my word. 3 weeks later, Marcus and Lyra stood on the bridge of their new ship, Harmony's Flight. It was a unique vessel. built with both human and Zephyrian technology. The hull was human steel reinforced with living Zephyrian crystal. The engines were human fusion drives, guided by Zephyrian bio-navigation. Even the crew was mixed, half human, half Zephyrian, all volunteers who believed in the mission. "First gate coordinates locked in," announced Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station. "Biosensors detecting no immediate danger," added flight singer Thelnis, her musical voice translated for the human crew members. Marcus looked at Lyra, who stood beside him at the center of the bridge. Over the past 3 weeks, they had worked together constantly, planning the mission, designing the ship, training the mixed crew. He had learned that she was not just beautiful and intelligent, but also incredibly brave and kind to everyone around her. "Ready?" he asked her. "Ready," she replied, though he could see the nervousness in her silver eyes. "Take us in," Marcus ordered. The first Nexus gate was a massive ring of black metal floating in space near a dead star. It was easily a mile across, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. Previous expeditions had found that the gate would respond to certain actions, but no one had ever figured out how to make it work. "Human expeditions tried using mathematics and logic," Lyra said as they approached. "My people tried using music and harmony. Both failed. So what if we try both at the same time?" Marcus suggested. They spent hours experimenting. Marcus would input mathematical sequences while Lyra sang complex harmonies. Slowly, incredibly, the gate began to respond. Symbols lit up along its rim, and the center filled with swirling energy. "It's working," shouted Dr. Peterson from the science station. "But something's coming through from the other side," Thelnis warned, her feathers standing on end. A sleek ship emerged from the gate's energy field. It was clearly alien, but not like anything either humans or Zephyrians had ever seen. The ship was damaged and drifting. "Life signs aboard," reported Lieutenant Kim. "Faint, but definitely there." "Bring them aboard," Marcus decided. Medical teams to the docking bay. The rescued alien was unlike anything they had imagined. It looked somewhat like a walking tree, with bark-like skin and leaves for hair. But its eyes were ancient and wise, and when it spoke through their translation computers, its words chilled them to the bone. You opened the gate," the alien whispered from its medical bed. "The first to do so in 1,000 years. "What's your name?" Lyra asked gently. "Where are you from?" "I am Keeper Veltar of the Cyrenthian Archive. My people are all dead now. Killed by the Devourers when they came through the gates." Marcus felt cold dread creep up his spine. "Devourers? From beyond our galaxy," Veltar explained weakly. "They consume all life, all energy. They used the gate network to spread across the galaxy like a plague. My people and others tried to fight them, but we were too divided, too suspicious of each other." "How did you survive?" Lyra asked. "I was the last guardian of the final gate. I closed the network and hid here for 1,000 years, hoping someone would come. Someone who could unite the surviving peoples before the Devourers return." "Return?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "They are already coming," Veltar said, his tree-like form trembling. "My sensors detected their scout ships at the galaxy's edge 6 months ago. They will be here within 2 years. And this time, they will finish what they started." The medical bay fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. "How do we stop them?" Lyra asked finally. Veltar looked at her and Marcus standing together, human and Zephyrian side by side. "The same way you opened the gate when no one else could. Unity, cooperation. The Devourers are strong, but they have one weakness. They cannot understand why different species would work together instead of fighting each other." Over the following days, as they explored the ancient archives Veltar led them to, Marcus and Lyra discovered the full scope of the threat. The Devourers had destroyed dozens of civilizations. The only peoples who had survived were those who had learned to work together perfectly, combining their different strengths. "The Nexus gates are more than just transportation," Veltar explained as they studied the ancient data. "They are a test. Only species that can truly cooperate can use them effectively. That is why your marriage is so important. Our marriage was an accident, Marcus protested. Was it? Veltar's ancient eyes seemed to see right through him. Or was it exactly what the galaxy needed? A symbol that two very different peoples could become one. That night, as their ship drifted in space near the ancient archives, Marcus found Lyra on the observation deck. She stood looking out at the stars. Her wings folded around herself like a cloak. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, using a human expression he had taught her. "I was thinking about what Veltar said. About unity and cooperation." She turned to look at him. "Marcus, do you think we could make this real? Not just for 6 months, not just to prevent war, but—" Marcus studied her face in the starlight. Over the past month, he had come to care for her more than he had thought possible. She was brilliant and brave and kind. She made him laugh. She challenged him to think differently. When she was hurt or afraid, he wanted to protect her. When she was happy, it made him happy too. "I think," he said slowly, "that I would like to try. If you're willing to take a chance on a confused human who stumbled into the most important moment of his life." Lyra smiled. The first truly happy smile he had seen from her since the morning he woke up married. "I think I would like that too," she said softly. As they moved closer together under the alien stars, both of them knew that their accidental marriage had become something much more important than either of them had imagined. It had become hope for the entire galaxy. 6 months later, Marcus and Lyra stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The great crystal amphitheater on Athros Prime had been expanded to hold not just Zephyrians, but thousands of humans, and representatives from 12 other alien species that had joined their growing alliance. The mission to explore the Nexus gates had been more successful than anyone had dared to hope. Working together, humans and Zephyrians had unlocked secrets that had been hidden for 1,000 years. They had found other survivor species, built new alliances, and discovered weapons that could fight the approaching devourers. But most importantly, they had proven that unity was not just possible, it was powerful. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked Lyra as they waited behind the great doors of the amphitheater. She looked beautiful in her wedding dress, which combined human white silk with Zephyrian crystal threads that sparkled like captured starlight. Her silver eyes shone with happiness and just a touch of nervousness. "I have been ready since the day you chose to stay," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to do this? Really sure? Because once we walk through those doors, there is no going back." Marcus wore the formal uniform of the new United Fleet, with symbols from both Earth and Athros Prime on his shoulders. Around his neck was the crystal pendant Lyra had given him at their accidental first wedding, and on his finger was a ring made from metal taken from both human and Zephyrian ships. "Lyra," he said, taking her hands in his. "6 months ago, I stumbled into marriage with someone I barely knew. Today, I am choosing to marry my best friend, my partner, and the woman I love more than anything in the universe." Her wings fluttered with joy. "Even though I am not human? Even though our children will be different from either of our species? Especially because of that," Marcus said with a smile. "Our children will be the future. Beings who belong to both worlds and can understand everyone." The great doors opened, and music filled the air. Human orchestras playing in harmony with Zephyrian song flights. As they walked down the aisle together, Marcus saw faces from across the galaxy. Admiral Hayes sat beside King Zarthal, both of them smiling. Captain Rodriguez gave him a thumbs up from the human section. Veltar, much healthier now after months of medical care, stood with the other alien ambassadors, but the most important faces were in the front row. Marcus's parents had traveled from Earth, his mother crying happy tears and his father beaming with pride. Lyra's siblings surrounded the king, their feathers bright with joy. The ceremony was performed by both a human minister and a Zephyrian song priest. The vows they spoke were written together, mixing traditions from both cultures. "I, Marcus Chen of Earth, choose to bind my life to yours," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. Not by accident this time. but by love and free will. I promise to stand with you against any darkness, to explore the galaxy at your side, and to build a future where all beings can find their place among the stars. I, Lyranus of Athros Prime, choose to bind my life to yours, Lyra replied, her musical voice making the crystal walls ring with harmonics. I promise to fly beside you through any storm, to face the unknown with courage, and to help you build bridges between all the scattered children of the galaxy. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard across the city. Humans applauded while Zephyrians sang, and the other alien species added their own sounds of celebration. But the wedding was just the beginning. 5 years later, Marcus and Lyra stood on the bridge of their flagship, the Unity. Around them, the largest fleet in galactic history spread out across space. Human ships flying alongside Zephyrian vessels, with support from a dozen other allied species. Before them, the Devourer fleet emerged from dark space like a plague of shadows. The enemy ships were massive and black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Their very presence seemed to drain the life from nearby stars. All ships report ready, announced their tactical officer, a three-eyed being from the crystal worlds of Nexari. Bioharmonics aligned across all vessels, added their navigation officer, whose flower-like form swayed with musical patterns. Marcus looked at the display showing their combined fleet, 300 ships from 24 worlds, all working together with perfect coordination. It was something the galaxy had never seen before, and something the Devourers had never faced. Lyra, are you ready for this? He asked his wife. She stood beside him, no longer the nervous princess from their first meeting but a confident fleet commander. Her silver eyes blazed with determination. We have been ready for this our whole lives, she said. Even before we knew each other, we were preparing for this moment. Behind them on the bridge, their children played quietly in a special area designed for young ones. 3-year-old Elena had her father's dark hair but her mother's silver eyes and small wing buds on her shoulders. 2-year-old David had his mother's feathered hair but his father's brown eyes and human arms. They represented something entirely new in the galaxy. Beings who belonged to multiple species and could communicate with anyone. All ships. Marcus spoke into the fleet-wide communication system. This is Admiral Chen. Today we face an enemy that has destroyed countless worlds. But they have never faced us. They have never faced beings who chose unity over division, love over fear, cooperation over conquest. All wings, Lyra added, her voice harmonizing with his. This is Admiral Lyra. Remember that we fight not just for our own worlds, but for the right of all species to exist in peace. We fight for a galaxy where differences are celebrated, not destroyed. The Devourer ships moved forward like a wave of darkness, but the Allied fleet was ready. Human ships attacked with precise technology, while Zephyrian vessels used bioorganic weapons that confused Devourer sensors. The crystal beings of Nexari created shields of living light, while the tree folk of Veltar's homeworld used songs that disrupted enemy communications. The battle raged for hours. The Devourers were powerful and had destroyed many civilizations before, but they had a fatal weakness that Veltar had been right about. They could not understand cooperation. They fought as individuals, each ship trying to maximize its own kills. The Allied fleet fought as one organism, each ship supporting the others. When the Devourer command ship finally exploded in a burst of dark fire, the remaining enemy vessels fled back into the void between galaxies. The victory celebration lasted for days. On every Allied world, beings of all species danced together in the streets. The threat that had hung over the galaxy for 1,000 years was finally gone. But for Marcus and Lyra, the most important celebration was a quiet one. They stood in their garden aboard the Unity, watching their children play with young beings from a dozen other species. Elena was teaching David and their alien friends a new game that combined human tag with Zephyrian flying patterns. Do you ever regret it? Lyra asked, slipping her hand into his. That translation error that started all of this? Marcus looked at his family, thought about the fleet they commanded together, and considered the peaceful galaxy they were helping to build. Never, he said firmly, Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Even accidentally marrying an alien princess? Especially that. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Though I have to say, I'm glad we got to choose each other the second time around. As the stars wheeled overhead and their children's laughter filled the air, Marcus reflected on how his life had changed from that first confused morning on Athros Prime. He had learned that home truly was where the heart was. And his heart had found its place among the stars, with a family that represented the best hopes of an entire galaxy. Humans had always been good at adapting, at finding ways to thrive in new places. But Marcus had discovered something even more important than adaptation: the ability to create something entirely new from the pieces of what came before. Their accidental marriage had become the foundation for a new kind of civilization, one where beings from different worlds could build a future together, and their children would carry that legacy to the stars, proving that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to find their place among its infinite wonders. The war was over. The future had begun, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, new species were looking up at the stars and dreaming of the day when they too might join the great alliance that had started with two confused people and a very important translation error. In the end, Marcus thought with a smile, sometimes the best adventures began with someone getting completely lost and ending up exactly where they needed to be.